This screencast supports this lesson, which has taken some pages from Unit 6 in Cutting Edge Elementary, and that is by Sarah Cunningham, Pete Moore and Araminta Crace, and it is published by Pearson. So we're going to do a bit of skills work. So this comes from the task section. There's a listening and then a speaking based on a favourite place to eat. And you will also need a few other things. We'll also incorporate some grammar, and we're going to focus on how much, how many. So this is another page from the same unit from Cutting Edge. You've also got the teacher's book notes. You've got the notes for the whole unit here, so scroll down to find the pieces that you need. And at the back of the student's book, it has this section called Study, Practice and Remember. And this basically has a grammar reference and then some controlled practice tasks. So you've got There Is, There Are, which is the first part of Unit 6. And then if you scroll down through this, you'll find how much, how many. There's also another document which has some answers which relates to the how much, how many part of the lesson. So I'll talk more about that in a second. And you'll also need an audio for this lesson, for the listening section. So, as I said, we've got some skills, we've got some listening and then some speaking, and then we're going to do some grammar with how much and how many at the end there. I suppose you could do it the other way round and move the how much, how many to the beginning of the lesson and then do the listening and then the speaking. So listen to your tutor and see what they recommend that you do. So the first part that I'm going to talk about today is the listening, and there is a nice warmer here, which is when you have special meals in your country with a family or friends. You go to a restaurant or stay at home, and what kind of restaurants do you prefer? So that's a nice warmer there. If you want something just to go in front of the whole listening, you could do something on word pairs. So we've got fish and chips in this listening, and so you could start off your lesson by putting a few pairs of these on the board. Fish and chips, salt and pepper, knife and fork, black and white, things like that, and you could mix them up and get the students to match them together to make the correct order of events. There's no rhyme or reason as to why we say salt and pepper, not pepper and salt. So it's quite a funny thing to cover for the students, and it is pretty useful. So you could maybe have sweet and sour, tea and coffee, fruit and vegetables. There we have a certain way of talking about things, don't we? Yeah, bread and butter, not butter and bread. Okay, and listen to the pronunciation as well. Fish and chips, knife and fork. The and becomes the n. So it's well worth drilling as well. So you could make a nice little warmer looking at 3 or 4 of those word pairs, get the students to match them together and then drill them, and laugh at the craziness of English and the way that we always say bread and butter, not butter and bread. However, you might want to get just straight into it. Depends on your timing, doesn't it? Because you've got a warmer here. And another option would be just to put up 3 pictures of restaurants. Maybe you could use some of these or some local ones, whatever you fancy, and say, have a look at the restaurants. What kind of food is it, and which one would you like to go to? Or maybe which one would you like to go to on a special occasion as well. So a couple of ideas for warmers there. Then you could get them discussing questions in number 1, and then they'll be ready for the listening. Now, in a listening lesson, you're looking for certain stages of a receptive skills lesson. So raise interest first, then potentially pre-teach some vocabulary, any blocking vocabulary that there might be within the questions or the text itself, and then an easy first task, and then a more complex second task. So when I'm looking at a listening or a reading activity in the book, a receptive skills activity, those are the stages that I'm looking for. So what have we got here? We've got raising interest and background knowledge here. We've got the first task. Doesn't look super simple, but I think it's okay. Yeah. And then there is another task as well. So let's have a quick look at that. Here we go, it's on the next page. I've just scrolled down to find this page. Here's the useful language box. That's going to be used in the speaking task, but it also is one of the listening tasks. So the second listening task, they have to listen and tick the phrases in the box that they hear. So we've got raising interest, we've got two tasks that look okay, and the first one looks easier than the second one. Great. So the other thing to think about would be, do we need to pre-teach any vocabulary? Now, I've had a look at the recording script, and I've had a look at the phrases here and the tasks, and I think it should be okay. So I don't think we really need to pre-teach anything. There's only one thing that's jumping out at me, and that's in this task here, is speciality and a typical dish. So maybe we could cover that when we get to that section. I'll talk more about that in a second. Okay, so we've raised interest, and then we need to set the scene, prepare the students for what they're going to listen to. So you might even be able to put up a picture of 3 people on the board with the names, and then so you're going to listen to these 3 people talking about their favourite place to eat. Okay, then they're ready for what's going to come at them. You say, I'm going to have a look at these sentences and decide which person each sentence is connected with, or find a simpler way of saying that, basically. So which sentence matches to which person. And they listen and match them at the same time. So they need to be able to see this task at the same time as they're listening, okay? And then you need to clearly say to them, I want you on a piece of paper to write number 1, and either put J for Joe, T for Tristan, or K for Kate. So the instructions need to be really clear. It might be a good idea to give them a bit of time just to read the sentences and just check that they know the vocabulary. I think the only thing that is possibly confusing is noodles. So if you had a picture of some noodles to quickly flash at them, then that would be good. So you can say, read the sentences. Are there any words you're not sure about? And then be ready with a quick picture of noodles if that comes up. Then procedure-wise, play the listening. And they write J, T or K down. Then at the end say check together, talk together, so that you can listen in and hear how they've done. Then do some class feedback as well, making it visual. And then the same procedure with the second task. So remember, they're listening and ticking the phrases that they hear. So again, show them these phrases, and then I think the only ones that they might not know in terms of vocabulary are lively. So you could say, have a look in B. It's talking about the atmosphere. Is that things that you can see or something that you feel? Okay, yeah, an atmosphere is something you feel. And it says that there might be a lively atmosphere. I mean, you can mime a bit of lively atmosphere if you like, or just check that the students know that word. Yeah, so I'd probably say, do you think a lively atmosphere is very calm and quiet, or is it noisy and people are moving around a lot, or something like that? Yeah, and is it positive or negative? Lively. And the other thing to clarify would be speciality and typical dish. So you could say at the fish and chips place, what do you think the speciality is? Is it curry? No, it's fish and chips. And a typical dish in a Chinese restaurant, what do you think it would be? And you could ask there. Okay, so we're just checking that they know speciality and typical dish. I'd probably drill those as well, because later on they're going to be using them in a speaking task. And then they listen, tick the ones they hear. I'd probably pause briefly in between each person to give them time just to catch up on the reading, listening, ticking. Just pause briefly. And then get them to talk together, peer check, talk together. What are your answers? And then go through as a class. Okay, and then at the end you could say which one do you think was your favourite place to eat? Was it the fish and chips or grandma's house or the other one, as a way of rounding it off. And then they're going to move into the speaking section. And here's the speaking part. So it directly follows on. As you can see, that listening's been preparation for this. So it's fairly simple. They have to choose their favourite place to eat, make notes using these headings. That gives them preparation time to work alone doing that. Then You give them the instructions that they're going to talk about their favourite place to eat, and they prepare, and you direct them towards looking for these phrases as well, saying use some of these. Then into breakout rooms, taking turns to talk about their favourite places to eat. Teacher, monitor, listen in, write down any examples of good language use you hear or any errors that you hear, and then come back together at the end and do some feedback on ideas. What did you learn about? What did your partner tell you? Tell me one thing that your partner said that you thought was interesting. Something like that, feedback on ideas, and then share some of the sentences that you thought were correct or not correct, and correct the incorrect ones. So you can use the chat for that, or you can use a Word document that you've created. There's an idea in the teacher's book for how to start off this whole section, which I think is really nice. So let's just have a quick look at that. Here it is. I think it's a nice idea. It's a live listening, actually, treating yourself like an audio. So have a look at that idea there. I think it's a nice way in and focuses the students on the task. Okay, you could start the lesson, your part of the lesson, like that. So we're moving on to the grammar focus of the lesson, connected with food, and it's how much, how many, but don't tell them that yet. You can tell them that later on. So I would probably start off by saying, so British food, would you go to a British restaurant? Would that be your favourite restaurant? What kind of food do you think they would have? And be prepared for them to laugh at the nature of British food being something you might want to eat, or they might be very polite about it, who knows. Then move on to looking at this quiz here. Okay, so get this quiz up on a slide and get the students talking. What do they think is the correct answer? 1, 2, A, B or C for each one. You could get them to talk together, or you could work through it with them, whatever you think. Okay? Here are the answers to that task, which can be used as a reading task, but I don't think there's much value in it, but just that you know the answers to that task, then here they are. Yeah, and treat it very lightly. It's a bit of a laugh, really. So these sentences now form the context for the grammar. So you've checked the answers and decided which one is the correct answer for each one, and then you can say, have a look. Why do some of the sentences say how much? And why do some say how many? See what the students have to say. See if they remember that cups is countable and potatoes, look at that S on the end, 1 cup, 2 cups, 3 cups, 1 potato, etc. But look at the rice. Can we count rice? 1 rice, 2 rices? No, we can't. What about chocolate, etc.? So what you're trying to get to is that we use many with countable nouns and how much with uncountable nouns. So talk about it and then put this up on a slide and get the students to decide. And then you could check with saying, okay, grapes, how much or how many? How many? Butter. Yep, you could say some different nouns and see if they can work out which one is how much and which one is how many. You've got a lovely task here that is control practice moving into a speaking task, which is lovely. So get them to complete many or much in each of these, checking why they're doing it, whether it's countable or uncountable. So they can do a couple of examples together, then let them work alone, and then peer check and feedback as a class. Then demonstrate asking and answering a few of the questions, perhaps drill a couple of the questions to get them nice rhythm, and then put them into breakout rooms to ask and answer the questions together. Come back into the main room to get some feedback on ideas and to do any correction that you need to do there. A couple of things I'd point out. If you're doing a 30-minute lesson, I don't think you've got time for all 12, so cut it down to 6 or 8. A 40-minute lesson, I think you'd be fine. All right. To make it more challenging when they're in the breakout rooms, tell them not to look at the completed answers with the how much, how many already in the gaps. Okay, so just make them look at a copy of this, but still with the gaps so that they're trying to retrieve whether it was how much or how many. Okay, so to make it a bit more challenging for them. And that is the end of this lesson.